Today we are learning about slope-intercept form. In 4.7a, I asked you to tell me where you saw the numbers in the equations. Here I have 4.7a, and here's what I did. Let's look at the numbers in the equations and see if we can find out where they show up in the graph. So on number 1, I'm just going to look at all the numbers that are alone. These are the easiest to see. So on number 1, the plus 6, I see that this dot is 6 up, and if you look in the table, you see that this is like the only point that has a 6 in it. So I'm guessing that that 6 is going to be there in the middle on the y-axis on every graph. Let's go ahead and look. On number 2, when we go and look at the middle, sure enough, it's at 4. On number 3, when we look in the middle, sure enough, it's at 2. And that will happen every single time. And the reason why is when you're on the y-axis, then that's where x is 0. You see x is 0, y is 3. And anytime you put a 0 in for x, this first term will always be 0, so you're just going to end up with that last term anyway. So we call that last part of the equation the y-intercept. Let's go ahead and write that down in our notes so we can keep track of it. I'm going to write down that the last part is the y-intercept. Mathematicians have given this a letter. They call it B. I don't know why they chose B, but they write equations just like the general form of this type of equation as y equals mx plus b. So there's the y-intercept. Now let's go ahead and look at that assignment again and see where we can see the number in the front. Now I wrote a 1 on this first equation because anytime there is no number in front of the x, its coefficient is automatically 1. So we're looking for a 1 on the first, a 2 on the second, and it looks like a 3 on the third one. Now looking at the first one, I do see a 1 right there in my x values, but I can choose any x values I want, so I don't think it's that. So I don't think this is actually like any particular point, so we have to be a little more sneaky. When I do look at my grand big picture, I notice that these lines look like they're getting steeper as I go along. So I think that first number has to do with the slope. And if you look at it, let's go to our graph and find the slope here. If we go and make our slope triangle, I find that my change in y is 1 and my change in x is 1. So that first number should be the slope. Let's go ahead and see if I'm right. On this one, it should be 2, and when I go up 2 and over 1, that means my change in y over change in x is 2 over 1, which equals 2. That's my slope. And then for this one, I go up 3 and over 1. So my change in y over change in x is 3 over 1. And so that's equal to 3. And if you look on the other ones, just at a glance, they're both negative and their front number is negative. So that first number should be the slope. Let's go ahead and write that down too. So this first number is called the slope. Hopefully you remember that the letter for slope is M. And I don't know why that is either. M for mountains. Mountains have slopes. Like, that's how I remember it. Or I just remember M is slope. So all you're doing today is you're identifying what the slope and y-intercept is of each equation. There's going to be a couple graphs where you graph them. I'm not going to cover this in this video. I'll cover it in a different one if you need more help on that. So let's go to these equations. Slope is always the number that's with x. So I'm going to write down slope. It's the number with x, so y equals mx plus b. It's going to be the m. So this one, the slope is 3, and the y-intercept is 2. I'm just going to write y-int for short. Okay, that's literally all you have to do. But it gets a little harder. Like on this one, there's only one number. What number is that one number? Well, that one number, y equals 1/2 x, it's the number in front, so it's going to be the slope. But then what do I write for the y-intercept? Do I just write 1/2? Hopefully you know the answer to that is no. It should be the number that's added on, and if we were to add on 0, it doesn't really do anything. 1/2 x plus 0, I hope you understand that that's the same as just 1/2 x. So we're going to say our y-intercept is 0 because that's the only number we can add on to make this true. Now let's go over here. This one gets a little trickier, but the number in front of the x, or the slope, is -3/5. And the y-intercept is the number being added on. Well, there isn't a number being added on. There's a number being subtracted, which is the same as adding a negative. So this will be a -3. Okay, this one's a little tricky. Make sure to keep track of what's happening. Remember, the number in front of the x is our slope, or our m. So my slope is the number in front of the x. Be careful though, because this one is actually -2. And our y-intercept will be +4. Okay. On this one, my y is on the opposite side. Hopefully that doesn't throw you for a loop, because you can swap the sides of the equal sign. That's fine. Our number in front of the x is, well, it's not there, but if there's no coefficient, then it should automatically be a 1. So this will be -1. And our y-intercept, the number that's alone, is just 1. Okay, there's one other example I'd like to give you that's not here. We'll call it number 6. And that's, what if it says y equals just a number? Well, let's write this in y equals mx plus b form. I don't have any x term at all, but I know the y-intercept will be 6. What number could be x so that the whole thing simplifies to 6? Well, 6 plus 0 equals 6, and x times 0 equals 0. So we're going to rewrite it like this. Now I know that my slope is the number in front of x, or 0, and my y-intercept is 6. It's just mathematicians are lazy, so they prefer to write it this way over this way. We also like the simplest form. So if you find something that has a slope of 0 and a y-intercept of 6, just write it without the slope, right? Y equals 6, and you'll be good to go. Now here are some ways to remember what m and b are. So m, you can think m for mountain. You can think it's more of a slopey letter. And I like b for the y-intercept is the beginning. Generally when x is like time frequently. So we say when time is 0, that's the beginning. So here's the beginning value. You could also say, well, if it's the y-intercept, by makes a word, not bs. B slope. I hope that was really, really punny and made you giggle just a little, even if it was inside your head. So that's all we're doing for today. Good luck.